guys, my name's Richard Thrasher in EMS methodology, and I'm going to do a quick presentation on the Battle of Thermopylae. Anybody familiar with that at all? Greek history, movie 300. Movie 300 is very interesting, although not very historically accurate. We're going to cover the history and the context of this battle. I'm going to cover the major players. We're definitely going to look at the technology involved and the tactics used, because it gave the Greeks a huge advantage over the invading Persians. And we're going to discuss, why is this battle so famous? Because it's not like the Greeks won it. Persian Empire. Up to this point in history, this is the largest empire ever. Covers 5.5 million square kilometers and anywhere from 17 to 35 million people. Like I said, it's the largest empire to date at this time. They're growing, they're looking to expand, and modern Iran is modern day, Persia is modern day Iran. The Iranians still consider themselves Persians. As we look at this, let me talk about this guy a little bit, Darius the First. As you see, in the green was the original empire, and after each ruler has expanded greatly. Darius the First, he basically brought it over here more into Egypt. As you see, this is the map of the empire. Covers all the way over here to Egypt, and you see here this little tiny country over here, Greece. It's tiny compared to Persia. Now Persia was pretty much a unified empire. It had several spaced out like mini capitals for the regions. Greece, however, was not a unified country. It was a group of what they consider city-states. Your main two is Athens and Sparta. And as you see from the colors, the green are the Spartan allies, and the purple or what have you is the Athens allies. And these two groups, even though ethnically and culturally they're very similar, they fought each other all the time. We're not going to really go over each individual battles, but basically those dates are not battles with Persia, battles within themselves. However, nothing unifies a people like a larger enemy. Greco-Persian Wars, from 499 BC to 449 BC. I know it looks strange, but as you remember with BC dates, the closer you get, the less the numbers are. They basically started with the Ionian Revolt. That was from 499 to 493 BC, and the first invasion of Greece was 492 to 490. The Ionian Revolt basically caused that first invasion, and we'll cover a little bit of Battle of Marathon as well, because that sets the stage up for the second invasion of Greece from 480 to 479, and that's the battles of Thermopylae and the Battle of Salamis. Major players. Darius the First, he was known as Darius the Great. He expanded the empire into Egypt. He was obviously king during the Ionian Revolt, responsible for the first invasion of Greece. Something that's not talked about with the Persian empires, for the time, they built huge public works, large roads for travel, for trade. They had a navy to protect their ports. Generally the people were more educated, compared to a lot of other regions. And he died. Remember, he died in 1486. We'll get to that. Xerxes is the son of Darius the First. He's responsible for the second invasion of Greece, and he's a major player in the Battle of Thermopylae. Themistocles. You can read what it says up there. He's very important because he was not only at the Battle of Marathon, but what he learned at Marathon helped out in the Battle of Thermopylae. And then you got King Leonidas the First. one of the 2 kings of Sparta, leader of the famous 300, and he's famous basically for laying down his life in Thermopylae. Technology and tactics. All right, with the Greeks, you had what they call a hoplite soldier. Hoplites in reference to their shield. These are basically citizen soldiers. The average Greek was not, the average Athenian was not a soldier. They're citizen soldiers. They were mainly comprised of middle class, people who could afford this armor. The shield's about 3 feet in diameter. It's made out of wood and bronze. As you see, there's a bronze helmet, bronze chest plate. It's green because it's old and deteriorated. You see the leg armor and even some stuff that goes over top of the feet. If you've seen the movie 300, they portray the Spartans as being, half naked battling. No, the Spartans were different from the rest of the Greeks. Their whole culture and civilization was built around serving the state, and their service to the state was very militaristic. Starting at age 7, they were rounded up to a school called a goge. These children were forced to fight. They were starved for years and years, and the idea was to make somebody totally loyal to the state. Hunger did not bother these soldiers. It was very brutal. They used to openly flog these children with their parents, basically hollering, "Don't you pass out, don't you pass out," while they get flogged till they bled. They were taught to steal for food. Very, very, not very nice upbringing. There's also, in practice, when they got about 12 years old, that they were to choose an elderly male that was already in the forces for a sexual relationship. And that was forced on them, and they themselves had to ask for that partner. And so definitely different in the Greeks. Greek culture is definitely different in modern society nowadays. At approximately the age of between 19 and 20, they could actually join the Spartan army proper. This is talking about their tactics here. This is what you call the phalanx. Phalanx is Greek for finger. It's a finger formation. This is a little exaggerated because these spears are usually about 7 feet long. They're counterbalanced, but as you see, they line up in a group, and usually it was 8 across, 4 deep was their standard formation. And as you see, that looks pretty formidable. That's not something you want to charge straight at. That's a little bit better idea there. You form a line with the shields to guard. The guys behind you are up here. You keep your spear down here. And if they're long enough, even the guys in the third row can spear. So and they use the latest technology in metals. Bronze is for that time period. Bronze is pretty heavy duty stuff. So the Persian soldiers, on the other hand, were not very well trained. Your average Persian soldier didn't wear any armor. They carried wicker shields. Their bows were for the time period pretty much substandard, not very powerful. They were not able to penetrate through the bronze. However, the elite soldiers, right here, the immortals, if you've seen the movie 300, they wore masks, they look like ninjas. However, that looks like the exact opposite of a ninja that I would think of. Again, wicker shield. They did wear metal plate armor, or scale armor, excuse me, which is just like it says, it's little pieces of metal linked together. However, it's very thin, very light. These soldiers were made for basically just rounding up villagers and fighting villagers, not an actual trained standing army. Again, let's see, give some history, some back history of this. Talked about earlier about the Ionian revolt. As you see, most people in Ionia were allies with Athens. However, They're also ruled by the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire has had a lot of trouble controlling these people. So they hand-picked tyrants to rule these people. And some of these tyrants revolted, and Athens sent troops and support to them. However, the Ionian revolt was pretty much crushed. I wouldn't say it was short-lived, but every major battle they were wiped out. There really wasn't that much of a threat. And Persia basically regained control of those areas. Darius I got angry over this, super angry, and he wanted to invade Athens and make them pay. So he invades Athens at a place called Marathon. In the Battle of Marathon, the Greeks were overwhelmed. It was anywhere from 100,000 forces against 10 or 12,000 Greeks. Due to their tactics, they were able to fend off this force. They, in similar numbers to both battles, they pretty much killed 20,000 of their troops. I mean, it was so bad that when the Persians were fleeing, instead of letting them flee, they actually ran after them and butchered them. You know, there's supposed to be like reports their hands hanging off the boats where they're just cutting them down. Well, that it really enraged Darius I, and he spent several years planning another invasion. However, he dies in 486. So his son Xerxes I takes over this. He still has this hatred for Athens and wants to conquer Greece and make them pay. So what he does is he sends one of the largest forces ever seen. It numbers anywhere, modern estimates. Herodotus, which is the father of history for the Greeks, he claims it was about 2.5 million standing infantry. However, modern scholars tend to think it was between like 100 and 300,000. Plus, you had to set up base camp, so you're not having that many troops really at one place for a battle. However, they do think it was around 100,000. You cannot see it in this map, but they had to march around. They come in through the Hell Spot, which they did a very, very impressive feat. It was of engineering. They tied like 600 or 700 boats together, like huge ships, to make like a pontoon bridge to cross it. Because if they didn't cross it, the Hellespont up here, they'd have to make a big loop around here, and it'd probably take about a good 2 years to make it. You know, that's a long time to march troops for 2 years. You got to feed them, support them, and keep morale up, keep them just from running off. So they come around here, and the Greeks set up a defense right here. They built a wall. There's already a wall here, but they repaired it and built it, so they narrowed it down. And they called it the Hot Gates. The only reason it's called the Hot Gates, there's a hot spring there, so it was the Hot Gates. So they narrowed it down, and they put about 7,000 troops there. It was not just the Spartans and 300 men and 1,000 other Greeks. And it was about anywhere between, the numbers are a little fuzzy. It was anywhere between, 5,000 and 7,000 men there. There's also a goat path, or a path that circumvents all this around the mountain, and that's another thing. The sheer cliff wall here and open water here. So you got about a 300-yard gap there is what they're defending. They positioned 1,000 troops up here in the goat path because they knew about it. Now, during this time, one of the reasons why the Greeks didn't put more people out there is the Olympics were going on. And that was, time of peace in Greece, no fighting. And the Spartans were having their religious ceremony. They weren't supposed to go to war during that. They went to go see the Oracle of Delphi, and the Oracle Bible, basically, to sum up, said, you know, if you go to fight, you know, you're either going to lose your homeland, or you're going to lose a king whose lineage of Heracles, which Heracles is Greek for Hercules. Well, it just so happens Leonidas supposedly traces his family back to Hercules, so, you know, he takes that as almost divine right that he's got to go out and basically go on a suicide mission to protect his homeland. Battle of Thermopylae lasted for 3 days. Again, it was 7,000 Greeks against 100 to 300,000 Persians. And the Persians would send waves of 10,000 men. The first day, supposedly to Herodotus, they only lost 3 men, 3 Greeks. And as you see the numbers, after the end of 3 days, the Greeks lost around 4,000 and the Persians lost 20,000 men. On the second day, they sent their elite force called the Immortals. The Immortals didn't have any other luck than the rest of the troops. They met that phalanx, and they could not break through it. Now, on the third day, the Spartans and 1,000 Thespians agreed to stay behind and allow the rest of the group to retreat and regroup to fight for a later date. So there's some speculation whether, you know, was it ordained? Did they have, like, you know, did they feel like they had a divine right to stay there as far as the Spartans were concerned? Or did they do it for like a military tactic to, like, hey, we hold off the rear while our main forces retreat and they can fight another day. Also, it gave Athens time to evacuate. After this battle was over and all 300 Spartans and 1,000 Thespians were slaughtered, the Persians went to Athens and burned it to the ground, although there was like almost no casualties because everybody had already been evacuated. This is actually showing the Battle of Marathon, which was the battle earlier, and talk about the Greek Phalanx. They lined up this way, and like I said, the forces were overwhelming. What the Greeks did is they lined up straight with them, even though they had less forces. And what they did is they faked a retreat. So the center, they faked a retreat. The center comes in, as you see that line. The Greeks go back here. These troops come in, and what they do is they outflank them. The Greeks were lined up straight like this, like they're showing, and they come and flank them, and it was just a slaughter. You know, they got their phalanx together, and there's boom, boom. There wasn't nothing they could do. And neither Darius nor Xerxes learned from this, to change their tactics. So, the Greeks knew this tactic worked, and they continued to use it. Also changed warfare at the time. Even the Romans used a style of phalanx on the Roman legion. Why do you think this battle is so famous? I mean, it was a loss. I mean, nobody really, the Greeks didn't win it. It was a total loss. They were slaughtered. They were surrounded. They were slaughtered. So what do you think? What do y'all think?
They were outnumbered, but they did good still.
They still fought anyway to the last man.
Yeah. The Greek society lasted longer than the Persian Empire, and those who write history writes.
Well, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. Usually it's the winners that write history. However, they outlasted them. So, and they did. In the end,
the Greek culture spread further long term,
yes,
especially in the European.
And in the end, they did win the Persian War, so to speak. Any questions? All right. Well, thank y'all for having me.